All right, welcome to part 2 of class 5 of painting the landscape from beginning to end. And I am going to be stepping up to the easel here in just a bit and working on a painting I started 2 weeks ago. It's an acrylic underpainting. And for those of you who were here or watched the video, you will notice that it's quite different than how I left it. I was running into a couple different issues with the design, and I needed a little bit of time and space to kind of analyze it. So a lot of times when I'm beginning to run into, we also ran out of time, but when I'm getting to a point in the painting and something is off, but I'm not quite able to voice it or to figure it out, I will literally just step away, just take a break. That's one of the reasons I work on 5, 10, 15, 20 paintings at a time. Right now in my studio, I probably easily have, oh boy, I bet you I could say 20 or 30, maybe even up to 50 paintings that are in progress, and not be exaggerating. It's also part of my ADHD. I love starting paintings. Everything seems so exciting when I get started, and it has become part of my editing process. I used to really beat myself up about it, but now I just kind of just keep starting paintings, and if I fall out of love with them, there's oftentimes a reason. And so I don't mind painting over a painting if it's sat around for too long. So if you're anything like me, maybe don't beat yourself up too much. But there is a time and a place to actually finish some work, which is now for me, because again, I have a show starting next month. But the good news is I have a whole lot to choose from and to finish up. But even today after class, I'm going to start a whole nother painting. So there you go. But anyways, what I did with this image is I literally went through with white paint and I changed the horizon or the line of the back trees. I rose them up a little bit so that they weren't competing with the band of foreground, kind of that little peninsula that's sticking out. In the initial photo, that is a band of grass that's being lit by the sun. But I don't know, was that you, Tamara, who asked if it was the water going back behind? And I actually liked that idea. So, that's part of being open to a painting as you're doing it. And, painting by committee takes a village, as I like to say. And I liked that idea a lot of like, oh yeah, I think that would be more interesting than having a band of grass back there, is having the water wrap around. And again, it feels like a peninsula kind of sticking out. And I really like that. And it will also incorporate the left side and the right side of the image a little better. You guys can, tell me if I'm wrong on that. We can change it. But then I also overdid the sky, and I also had bands of light, which I'd still like to get in there. If you see the reference picture, we can actually do a share screen and I'll show you it real quick. So here is the reference. This is the original reference. In the image I will be painting from, I actually went in and cleared out a lot of these clouds. I don't like these clouds. They're a little stripy. They're kind of pokey. They're really heavy. So I'm going to lighten and change this sky quite a lot. There's the band of grass that you can see being lit. By raising this line up a little bit, I incorporated it and made it feel like the water. And if you remember when I was doing this, I had these lines of light and I was not happy with the direction they were going. So I'm actually going to use a wiping away method, I hope, to convey them today. The one thing I did edit and intended to get back in with the acrylics before class was the reflections down here of these trees. They are not there, so I will be painting those in oil. I will be painting oils over the top of the acrylic painting. All right, I've really enjoyed doing this a lot lately. It kind of speeds up my process. It also, with the acrylic underpainting, I'm really able to just load up and get some texture in there and just design and redesign and redesign and redesign, because they dry so quickly that I can just start layering paint, which is a lot of fun. I still love doing the wipe away method, where I kind of cover it with a mid value and wipe away my big light shapes. But I like having multiple tools at my disposal. So I can literally look at the reference or look at the image and say which one would work best for you. So I have, 3-4 different ways that I start paintings. And again, I don't know if that's the ADHD. I don't know if that's whatever it is, but I like to keep things fresh and interesting. And then I also like to think, how do I do a whole different way of painting but still make it feel like one of my paintings? How do I still make it about light and atmosphere and mood, which is what my paintings are hopefully about. So anyways, there's that reference. I do have it over on the left side of the easel over there, but that's the edited version of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step up and I'm going to actually glaze into this painting with oils. I'm going to start off with a full coat of transparent Indian yellow, kind of thinned down, kind of like a glaze, where it'll just slightly shift all the colors. Let me actually do share screen one more time. So here is scene. You guys are able to see that? It's very blue.
Yes.
So you see, this is literally within a minute or two of taking that other photo, and how different it is with the cool colors and everything else. So this is more realistic to what I saw. Which is kind of interesting and fun and could be a beautiful painting. I typically have my paintings leaning towards warmer colors. That's just become part of my voice, part of my whatever signature, kind of what people.
Your MO?
My MO, if you will, like very nice, like that. So I actually will have a reference similar to this on the easel or on my computer, and like I really like this has this very Monet feeling. So like I'm kind of thinking, oh, this would be a really nice painting too. But for this one and for this show, I felt like I should stay with this theme of the warmer colors. It'll fit better in the show, and this will work as far as showing you guys how I manipulate photos. Just actually took this photo through my sunglasses. That's my little secret trick that I do a lot to get my warm colors. But I do want to have some of these cooler greens and stuff. In the printout, they're all just warm and I get a lot of this lost, but I do want some of these grayed down greens in my painting. Anybody know why?
For the shadows?
Shadows, yeah, very good. What else? If everything is orange and yellow, then the orange and yellow is not special.
Yeah.
So by making some cooled down, and they're not very cool, these greens are really quite warm still, right?
Yeah.
But by having those in there, then the other colors will feel a little more special. Or they'll both play off each other nicely. So I'll have a little bit of contrast. I'm not only going to have a contrast of light and dark, but I will have some color contrast. But if let's see if we can bring it up here. Where's my paintbrush? If I were to add a bright green on here, right? If a lot of students, when they look at the work and they'll be like, okay, well, that's white, that's yellow, that's orangish, the brownish, and these are green, and they'll pull out their tube of green paint, right? If I put that anywhere on this scene, it looks completely out of place, right?
We're not seeing any changes if you're changing something.
You don't see me drawing on it?
No.
Huh. All right, well, let's just do a save.
We just see your computer background, your computer page.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And the one photograph on the right-hand side.
All right, let me do stop share and share that real quick. Thanks for letting me know. All right, now do you see it?
Yes.
Yeah,
all over the place. So if
Yes.
I put bright green, if I just was to look at this and think green, right, it just looks like chaos. So how do I make that green feel like it exists in this world, right? That it's under these same lighting conditions. So it's really imperative that when we are looking at our colors and our values and everything else, we want to keep them existing in the same space, you know, under the same lighting conditions, under the same weather conditions, under the same seasonal conditions, whatever it is. And that's how we, you know, part of harmony in our paintings. So I want to be aware that, you know, when I'm looking and naming colors and mixing the colors, it's not enough for me just to say green, right? I have to go, this is a green that is grayed down, tampered. I could, you know, I can mix other colors with it. I can mix my green using like a reddish blue and a yellowish and a reddish yellow. And that will all of a sudden neutralize that green. I'll show you here on our color wheel here in just a second. But anyways, that's what I wanted to get to. Sorry.
Michael?
Yep.
This is Leslie. Did you just, that photo that you're showing right there, you just took it through your sunglasses. Did you do anything else to the photo? Like when you know, changing the colors in any way, or is it just through your sunglasses?
That one is just there. So are you guys now seeing the bluer versions of them?
No, the
Yeah.
the orange version.
So no, that the original version would be this.
Yeah.
And the altered version is this. So you can see I lightened up the sky.
yeah,
Lightened up the sky. I took out the little dock. I actually darkened the water a little bit to make it feel like it's coming towards us and not just flat. I took out this tree. Took out the tree on the right side.
Yeah, I was just talking about the color. So you took it through your sunglasses and then you kind of altered it, made it a little warmer on Photoshop. Is that right?
I actually made it brighter on Photoshop.
Right.
I kept a lot of that temperature shift. Yeah. And you don't have to take it with your sunglasses. You can actually do a lot of that altering on any photo software. This is just the free one that comes with my computer. And there's an adjustments button up at the top, or filters, all sorts of different filters I can run it through and test different things.
Is this on a Mac or is it a kind
No,
of
this
computer?
is, whatever a normal, yeah, Mac. No,
Okay.
whatever a normal computer is, not an Apple.
Dell
Um,
or
Yeah.
HP.
yeah, something like that, right? Also here I can do the exposure, you know, I can lighten it, darken it, but that does all of it, right? In Photoshop, I can pick certain elements and tell it to do it. But anyways, there's lots of editing and, you know, manipulation we can do on our computer, or on our phone is even easier. And so I'm constantly just kind of playing with that to see, again, I'm just keeping in mind what's the story I want to tell. I can also be open to a new story. Like, you know, sometimes the vignette is a really nice tool to help kind of control the viewer. Saturation is a fun one to play with because that's kind of pretty. You know, the sky gets really acid and stuff, but it does bring out the little bits of reds that are in the shrubs and different things. But I will also always mess with it this way. I love to see my images as black and white, or, you know, slightly desaturated. The warmth tool, you guys can obviously tell that I play with that a lot because I like the warmer colors. Like this just feels cold and heavy to me. I don't know if it's from living in Oregon and I'm kind of a, you know, want to bring warmth into my house. But you know, if I go too far with it, well, that feels, you know, post-apocalyptic as well. So, you know, trying to figure out that happy medium. Maybe I do cool it down a little bit so that I can read some of these greens a little better. That's kind of nice, actually.
Yeah,
Maybe
like
I'll use that as a little bit of a reference, maybe right in there. So here's the original. Here's going a little warmer. So, and again, it's all, you know, there's no right, there's no wrong. And tint is a fun one too. It's again almost like putting sunglasses on it. A tint, like now I've got rose colored glasses on. Now I've got, I guess, green colored glasses. That's more of the sandy colored glasses. So it's kind of fun to play with these and just see, you know, and you can save multiple copies right up here, save as a copy. Yeah, there is a retouch button up here. I have no idea what that does. The other thing I use here a lot is cropping. Just, you know, what if I didn't, you know, what if I really just wanted to get in here and just tell this story of this tree in this water? You know, that could be a nice image. Pretty dark, not a lot of air. But anyways, lots of tools you guys can use at your disposal. Just kind of look around. Most of them are free, or lots and lots of them are free. So again, just using that. All right, stop share. Back to the easel. So there we go. Just putting my picture back to where I was. We are going to make this warmer. I am going to have some cooler, greener, grayish colors in there, again, to make the warms feel a little more special. I've definitely come in and edited, given some, you know, sky holes, but water holes in this instance, just to get a little bit of air down there, because otherwise everything felt very heavy. And I really wanted to play up the idea of that water. So let's get up there. I'm going to do a coat of transparent Indian yellow to really warm everything else up. It's also going to key everything in. You can have a cool key painting like I showed you with the blues and the greens. You can have warm with the orange, yellows, reds. And it is really just a matter of taste, or a matter of even image. A lot of times I'll actually even revisit an image and do it one in a warm key and one in a cool key, or one in a darker key, one in a lighter key. And just, you know, all of a sudden make one feel more like a nocturne, one feel like, you know, like this sunrise, one feel like midday. I can actually show you some examples real quick. These are from previous classes, just using different things, but got messed up there, but a very warm key painting, a little bit of cool down here, kind of a full color range with the purples, bluey greens, yellows, pinks, purples, right? But still trying to figure out how do I keep it in harmony, more of a nocturne, kind of a bright blues. So this was just about, you know, different sky colors and working on the bands of color as they transgress, but you can really see how different they all read. This is a fun experiment just to play with color, times of day. And this one has a really good example of a very warm, high key. Well, it's a full value range because it's got dark darks and that, but it's also very warm. And then you can see down here, we get very cool. So you can see how different they all can be, just doing little quick experiments and getting different colors. So you want to think about that as you're approaching your painting. What do I want this to be? Do I want a warm value, or do I want a cooler? Do I want full, like all of the color spectrum? You know, Tamara, you talked about your love of color. Whereas when I paint a really colorful painting, it often feels a little bit garish or not like one of my paintings. So it's just kind of what you're attracted to, what you're comfortable with, maybe what the colors of your house, what you want to match, all of that. So there is no right or wrong. It's just some choices you want to make. So I'm grabbing some Indian yellow here. I'm going to use a little bit of a Neo McGill medium. It could be kind of any medium, but I'm just going to put a little bit. When you paint over acrylics with oils, you do want a little bit of medium in the paint. I'm going to add about 10% medium. So I just barely dip my brush into the corner of the medium, mixing that with what is already a very transparent paint. This
Michael, sorry, but not oil, right?
This is oil now.
No, but not oil medium, not oil. What do you said Neo Mega, but because I usually don't use mediums with, you know, so.
It's just a touch of oil, I think, would help, but I am not totally positive on that. The
Okay.
reason I don't use oil at the beginning is it's so slow drying.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to speed up drying. And I mean, the truth is you probably won't get in a lot of trouble, but you may want to do a little bit of research about that on your own. And I can try to look something up about that. But it just in my reading about how to paint oils over acrylics, they suggest 5 to 10% medium. So it could probably be oil, would probably be fine. Woo! And look at that. It's a glaze. It's just super transparent. So I'm just kind of keying in my painting, giving me almost like it's almost like I did a value design and then I'm toning my canvas on top of that. Right. So this undercolor will kind of show through a little bit throughout the painting in glimpses. And I'll probably use some of this color in the sky. But I'm going to go ahead and zoom this in a little bit. Just so my arm isn't getting in the way quite as much, hopefully. And it's I chose a color that is purposely, when I look at it and look on these, it's very nice. It shows it right on the front. There's a little dot on the front. It's completely empty, a little circle. If it was full, it would mean it's opaque. If it was half full, it would mean it's semi-opaque or semi-transparent. And this one is empty, so it means it's fully transparent. So just kind of figuring out on the backs of the tubes, they'll generally, not always, not all brands, but generally tell you if they're transparent or opaque. If you're unsure, you can do tests. So these are my colors that I use often. What I did was put a bunch of lines with permanent marker, and then I tested the paint on top. So you can see some of them are very transparent. That permanent marker shows right through, and some of them become more opaque. It's harder to see when I put thicker paint on the left side. The line almost disappears like the cadmium red light. Cadmiums have a very good covering, whereas the Indian yellow, which is the color I'm using now, is very, very transparent. You can see it even when you put it on thickly. And there's actually this paint's loaded up. So that's a good way to test your paints. And so having a nice little graph like this. I also did something similar with all of my earth colors, the more naturalistic colors. You can see some of them have very good coverage. My list is on the back, so that's a raw umber. And only when I start scrubbing it way down does it become opaque. On this side, it's the raw umber with white mixed in. So this side is with white mixed in. This side is me just scrubbing until it gets really thin and I'm using less and less and less paint. So these are good little ways to test your colors. You only have to do this once if you keep them around, and that way you can constantly be looking at that and saying, you know, okay, that's the color, because I'm at this stage, I generally want quite transparent color.
So what other sometimes you use other color glazes?
I've got hundreds of tubes of paints, collected over the years. So I definitely will use lots. In fact, I'll use another one right now. So this that I'm grabbing here. So this is my typical palette. This is the palette that's on here. I picked it today to kind of represent the colors that were on my supply list. So it's the titanium white. This is a Hansa yellow light, but you can use a cadmium yellow medium, or a cadmium yellow light, sorry. This is Indian yellow. This is a cadmium red light. I did choose another color that is not on my supply list. I just wanted a transparent warm red. This one's called Rosa Sandello, but it's in Italian, so I don't even know what that actually means. I mean, red, of course. Anyways, this is quinacridone red, which is very transparent. Cadmium red is very opaque. Quinacridone is very transparent. I've got ultramarine blue, which I'll be using to kind of cool and gray down some areas. And this is my manganese blue hue. On both of these are quite transparent. The manganese blue is very transparent. So in paintings like this, I can use their transparency to good effect, I hope. So right now I'm grabbing a bit of oh, and these are my two guest colors. So I often have my normal palette up here, laid out basically in the form of a color wheel, but just straightened out. So this yellow going to this blue makes a great green. We're going to talk about that in this winter if you take my color theory class. But I'll often have guest colors over here. And that's just a way for me to kind of keep, because I know these well enough that I can just kind of use them and experiment. Oftentimes the colors over here are a little more experimental for me. But in this case, I do know most of these colors very well. This is a transparent earth red, which I really like this color a lot. And this is a Payne's gray, which makes beautiful, beautiful, cool greens. So that's why I grabbed that one. All right, and now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of this transparent earth red, and I'm going to bring that over into the tops of some of these trees, especially on kind of the lit side a little bit. And again, I'm just kind of roughing in some colors. It'll kind of give me a bit of harmony. Kind of going to be a warm tonalist painting, meaning not a whole lot of bright variety in color. It's all going to have kind of an innate harmony to it. Might be my opportunity to kind of start to hint at some of these reflections. Start to give them a little bit of shape and form. I'll have to get in there and darken those because, of course, this color's too.
Is that just transparent earth red, Michael?
Basically, right, kind of mixing into that Indian yellow a little bit.
Is that just the transparent earth red? I mean, earth red there?
Yeah, and then it's mixing in with that Indian yellow a little bit that's on there, also wet. But it already kind of has a nice glowy, you know, kind of dirty, but kind of glowy feel to it. It's just a nice way for me to kind of harmonize my underpainting a little bit. I'm just kind of scrubbing it in. That's what's nice about having a very dry acrylic underpainting. So I can be pretty mean to it. I can scrub a lot. I'm pretty mean to a lot of my brushes. I would not want to be using a soft, expensive brush at this stage. In fact, you guys can see I'm just using a house brush. I'm just kind of blocking in my big shapes, getting some ideas here. The tonalists in the group are kind of going, ooh, ah, and then the colorists in the group are like, that looks like a big mess, Mike. What are you doing?
I love it.
It
looks nice. I can't paint without Indian yellow.
And I just kind of have fun. Just again, it's really transparent. It's really quite light. I can just kind of get in here and just kind of, and all of it's very mobile. I can move this paint. It's nice and wet for at least, 15, 20 minutes. The paint is easy to manipulate. And what I like is that I just get very quickly kind of an idea of a little bit of a color scheme, a tiny bit. I'm going to come in and again add warms and cools and variation in there. But I'm going to go ahead and add a tiny bit of my Payne's gray, mix that in. So just so I can start getting those reflections in there. I want to make sure that I'm coming straight down. Reflections and shadows are different. So kind of being aware when you're looking at your photos of which is which. So these would be shadows, kind of. Right? Cast shadows coming from these trees here. And then my reflections coming straight down beneath.
So what's the difference between reflections and shadows?
Reflections come straight down. Shadows are based on the light. So reflections are reflecting the thing behind it, or that it's reflecting. A shadow is being, my light source is going to be over here, so it's casting shadows this way. Good question, though. Yeah, I see students getting those mixed up a lot. Reflections generally, maybe all the time, come straight down beneath the thing that they're reflecting. Shadows are completely angle dependent on the light source. So again, my light source is coming from over there, so I kind of know my shadows are going this way. Something to be aware of when you're painting with these cheap shop brushes or paint, house painting brushes, is they do love to throw hairs. I mean, all brushes do. So just being aware of that. And I kind of gather them up, try to, as I'm painting. So again, this is big, messy kind of phase. I'm just kind of knocking in big colors. Might even take a little bit of that Payne's gray all the way up into the sky, just to see, because I really want to play up the idea of the light coming from here. So I can actually darken or cool the sky over here a little bit too. All right, now what I'm going to do is actually some subtractive painting a little bit. So I'm going to bring back some of these lights a little bit. I'm going to move this down a little bit so that it's in my area. Grab the paper towel, and in fact, I'll grab a blue paper towel. These guys are a little more industrious. They don't, it can take a little more wear and tear. So when I'm getting in there and really pushing, I don't leave as much of the fibers of the paper towel. That can be really annoying. Just softening so I don't have just big brush strokes here. All right, my sun's basically at this angle, so it's kind of above these trees back here. It's not on this, not in the scene. So I can use my towel to kind of get in here and wipe away parts of that sky. This is not how I start all my paintings, but I sure do enjoy it. I feel like it's almost like a shortcut way to really jump in and get big areas covered. It's one of the reasons I do like working with the acrylics. as an underpainting sometimes. I can also do this by, just simply doing my sketch with oils and letting it dry as well, getting my value structure. The nice thing too with this paper towel is I can kind of come in and carve around those trees.
The oils, like, so if you do your underpainting in oil, do you have to let it dry really pretty much all the way before you go over it for the
100%.
underpainting?
Oh yeah, it needs to be very dry.
Very dry. Like, how long do you let it?
Go ahead.
How long do you let it dry?
Depends on how thick I painted it or how what colors I used. You'll notice that certain colors definitely dry slower. If you add white, it's one of the slowest drying colors I find. A lot of times I will use the fast matte colors, which I don't know if they're going to keep making or not. I heard, but there's a fast drying brands of colors you can use if you're really planning on kind of building it up. Otherwise, you can use a touch of drying mediums as well. Will kind of speed up your drying time. You just really want to, I'll take a paper towel before I start to test it and just really try rubbing it. And if the painting doesn't move at all, I'm usually in pretty good shape. But sometimes when you come back in and add a little bit of medium or whatever else, all of a sudden it almost feels like it reactivates the paint and the paint starts coming up. So yeah, you can definitely get yourself in trouble if you are doing an underpainting and then want to come back in with oils and do it too quickly. You'll start to all of a sudden all of your painting's just moving around again. You're underpainting. You just wipe
Well,
it
maybe
right.
that might be why you have so many paintings you're working on at once, because you have to go.
Part of it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that kind of like the edge of the glow? Like already kind of interesting and fun, and
Yeah.
just have so much fun with this. And it's always kind of new, just kind of seeing what will happen. And I can come back over this with blues and greens and purples and whatever else I want for sure. All right, here's going to be my first test. I'm going to go in and pretend that water is really getting hit by this light. I want it to have a glow to it, but I also want it to have a little bit of a warm area around it. So what I can do is I can grab my paper towel and give it a little bit of a twist. So it's not just the big fat shape of my fingers poking through it, but I can actually shape these paper towels a little bit and make them smaller. I could also be using a Q-tip. Maybe that's what it would be a better tool for this. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get back into this water area and I'm going to make it light, almost as light as possible. But I want to leave some of the warmth around it, some of those colors that we've mixed. So I'm just slowly spinning it as I pick up, color. So I'm using you see how much warmer or lighter that is already than over here? But I do know that light's passing through. Kind of at a bit of an angle, coming down, and a passing in front. So that guy's done pulling up paint. He filled up. So I just grab a new Q-tip. I just buy them at Costco or at the dollar store. So not worried about using a lot of Q-tips. Doesn't that look nice? It's like almost feels like the light's kind of passing back behind here, coming from back here, kind of coming through.
Yeah.
So fun for me. It's just kind of painting is carving almost, right? Painting is sculpting. And again, this is just one way. This is not how I paint all the time, but with the acrylics, I sure have this nice opportunity to play with this. I'm gonna have a little band of light coming down between kind of this back area of the grasses into here, I can kind of show you by bringing in some of the light on the tops of these grasses. So the light's kind of moving down through, and now it's going to poke out right here, kind of a little more subtle. All right. Opens up back here a little more because the shadow of this tree. I'm hoping it feels kind of atmospheric and a little soft. Like there's just a slight haze that this light's coming through. I might have to push that, you know, as I'm building up the painting a little bit. The other band of light is raking across the tops of these grasses. So it's coming over the top and poking down. It's going to have a little stronger of an angle. It's going to be casting a shadow on this bank a little bit. So I'm going to start a little bit of ways. Trying to keep my angle, my direction kind of the same. This one gets big enough that I'm going to head and use my finger a little bit here. So hopefully that's beginning to feel like kind of misty water with light coming down. I may have to, like I said, continue to describe that, you know, as I use more paint. But I'm giving myself, again, just kind of an underpainting, still retaining my value structure, still retaining my design, hopefully. But getting this idea of light. And again, a lot of this in the beginning is just notes for myself. I'll have to come through and fix this up. I've also got an interesting current of stuff, so I'm just going to kind of hint at that. It kind of counters those angles a little bit. So I could easily come in with like some of my quinacridone red or some of my blues here. If I wasn't in class, I would probably let this tack up and kind of dry a little bit, just so that I'm not constantly fighting with it picking up. But I want to kind of keep moving forward, just for, you know, because it's class, and keep going. So I'm going to bring in a couple colors, but I'm going to take a tiny bit of this quinacridone red. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of Indian yellow, and I'm going to really warm this area up and maybe a little bit of this area. So it really feels like there's a difference of what area is being hit by the light first and foremost. So this will be a little bit redder. Spotty there, so I'm just going to take my try and find a clean spot on my paper towel, and I'm just going to kind of damp that down so that so you see how that's a little bit redder, a little bit warmer than the brownish red I've got over here, hopefully. And I'm just trying to help tell the story of how that light is traveling through this space. This may be a little bit advanced for some of you, but I think that you can kind of get the idea of glowing edges, soft edges. If you wanted crisp edges, you know, you just come through with your paper towel or whatever and just create, you know, sharper edges. Again, it's just a matter of kind of carving a little more. I'm going to clean up these piles over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to get into some of those greens.
Michael, I know you're in the beginning stages, but the three little reflections of those trees that you put in are too identical.
Okay,
You see where I'm talking? It's just like that. Yep.
good call. Let's
Yeah.
shop
Sorry.
one. Yeah, good catch. Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Is when I'm painting with you guys, I don't step back nearly as much, so I don't see them as readily. I need to step back and to observe or take little breaks.
They're what your equal sizing shape on
Yeah.
your polymatic.
Very good call, and you are very correct. And it's easier to fix it now, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
wet, very mobile.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that.
That's a whole lot better.
Still use my paper towel and just kind of, you know, figure out what those shapes might be. Looking again, coming straight down.
That just changed the whole thing.
Good, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
Again,
you.
takes a village. Yeah, and I always wonder why in class I don't step back. I mean, but it's like my fear of dead air, right? Just minutes of me just standing back. Because normally what I would do is step back to the back of my studio, or again, just go out and, you know, hang out with a cat or go get a new cup of tea or coffee or whatever, and then just come back and you get those fresh eyes on it. But when you're just standing up here, just hugging the painting, it gets really difficult to see what's happening and more likely what's not happening, or where you're getting repetition of form. So I do appreciate that. Yeah, you guys are getting a nice semi-distant view of it. All right, so what I'm thinking here is I'm going to create kind of a mother color for a lot of these greens, because when we look at the reference, especially in my silly little photo here, there's not a lot of difference. I do have the black and white on the back. I want to have a harmony, but I do know that some of the greens are, you know, greener, and some of them are quite red. There's also going to be a lighter side, the light side facing the light, and a shadow side, the side facing away. These two are predominantly in shadow, but this is going to be a great opportunity for me to bring in some cool shadow greens to help kind of bring this forward and to create this separation of space. I'm also going to have that ability in the grasses here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to think kind of an ugly, earthy, muddy green, and I want to mix enough of it. So I'm going to take probably not that much earth red. I'm going to take my earth red, but first let's start with the greens. Let's go and make the brightest green we can make. For me, that's going to be with my manganese blue hue and my lighter greener yellow, right? This one's orangey, this one's yellow or greener. And I can make a very vibrant green. And hopefully by just looking at that, you're like, that belongs nowhere in this painting, right? But a lot of us are going to look and say, okay, that's yellow, that's green. I know how to make green. So let's put it on there, and it would just look like chaos, right? It doesn't belong anywhere in there. So I know by using my knowledge of the color wheel that to neutralize a green, because you do notice I don't have any green laid out on my palette. So I'm going to be making all my greens. So I'm using this color palette over here, 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues. So I made this vibrant green here. To neutralize that, I'm going to go across the color wheel, which means to my orange. I can use Indian yellow to neutralize that, or I can mix an orange with a red and a yellow and then neutralize it there. So let's try that. So to neutralize colors on your color wheel, or any of your primary colors here, red, yellow, blue, you just need to mix across. So if I had a bright, bright purple that I wanted to neutralize, or purple that was just too bright, whatever, for whatever reason. Who knows what color I would add to that? Neutralize it.
Yellow?
Yellow, great. So let's just see what happens. Take my yellow over here, I'm gonna bring it across and get it into that purple. And I'll take my purple back into the yellow. And what it does, when I say neutralizes, what I mean is it grays it down, it calms it down. Can you guys see that? How the gray, how in between they meet and becomes quite gray. So with my green, I'm going to take a little bit of my bright red here, my cadmium red. I'm going to mix a little bit of my yellow and make an orange. This was so revolutionary to me. I did not learn this in art school. I learned it after art school, which just kills me. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. I don't know. There's always a good chance of that. So I got my orange. I'm going to take a little bit of green.
No, they don't teach it in art school.
Know how to survive as an artist. Know how to actually mix colors. And look at the difference between that green and this green. This one's much closer to what I could imagine on this painting, right? Almost feels like it belongs already, right? It has just such a nice harmony. And then I got parts where I could add a little more orange on the edge, right? Doesn't that just feel,
Yeah.
versus this?
No,
Right? It's just garish and out of control. So you want to neutralize your colors. Right? These are my primaries I've laid out here. All of the colors that I like in painting, for the most part, every once in a while I'll use a primary in my colors, but almost all the colors that I use in my paintings exist within the color wheel. They're all the grayed down, brown down colors that you can get by mixing across. And that's why using a limited palette, 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues, typically can still give you thousands of colors and, you know, and white. And, you know, I do have, again, a couple guest colors. This brown color I could actually mix, make it probably something quite close. But it's a shortcut color. right? So let's see, maybe a little more red into it.
That
So I
is,
can make most of my guest colors, but it's sometimes nice to have a little shortcut color. See, pretty dang close. Can even mix Payne's gray pretty easily. For those of you who are curious on that one, I would use ultramarine blue, tiny bit of my cadmium red, and just a touch of the yellow. So that's going to make the ugliest purple ever. You add just a touch of yellow to it, and it will neutralize down, and it'll make just a really nice dark. And the cool thing about this color is I can warm it up or cool it down, so you can see how close that is as a dark. Over there, folks. So I can make most colors with these colors, or at least close enough colors. But a lot of times my guest colors are literally just shortcut colors. All right, so I did like this green. Let me wipe off these greens so we're not influenced by them too much here. I actually did like this green, so I actually may use that. Another cool thing is with the Payne's gray, you can actually make really nice greens with almost any of your blacks. So I can make very earthy greens with those as well. So a lot of times having a black on there, but not as a black, but as a color to use mixing in with other colors can be really nice. Right? Isn't that nice? Very subtle.
Yeah.
I'd say the Pacific Northwest, it has kind of more of that pine tree, more of the mossy green to it. I know a lot of my friends who use that a lot for their greens, painting in plein air or in the Pacific Northwest. Another thing is that our greens here often have more red in them than we think. Same with probably where you live, Linda. To find a lot more red. So just mixing in a little touch of red often will help to neutralize your green, but also to warm it up and to give it kind of an earthy feel. All right. What do you guys think? Should I use this green or this Payne's gray, yellow green more? So I want to mix kind of a mother color.
I like the bottom one.
I like the bottom.
Me too. That's another thing about my guest colors. A lot of times I just clean up my palette and just lay colors over here that I think, I might be able to use those again. Maybe not even on this painting, but maybe on another painting. And they're always bendable, right? I can always alter these colors again by adding a little bit of whatever is needed. I just kind of think of them as nice piles of gray.
Can you imagine 1,000 years from now, somebody trying to mix the colors you've mixed because they love them? And your paintings are still viable 1,000 years from now.
There you go, I like it. It's just kind of a nice, I don't know what color that is. Weird. I'm going to add this
Dirt.
red into this green, I think, to make it so it fits into this world. But I'm going to take a big bunch of my Payne's gray, big bunch of this yellow, and mix that up and see where we end up. Kind of a very nice, dark green. I can kind of see that in these shadows over here. You know, I can always cool it down a little more because I can have my shadow side over here. If I want cooler or lighter, I can add some of these blues or whatever. I can also take part of this over here and I can add more yellow for where there's more light coming in. Take part of it down here and I can add some red to it. So again, having this mother color really helps me to harmonize my colors. So again, for you more tonalist painters in there, this is a great tool for after you've gotten your values established and you've got your lights and your darks, you've got your design established, just coming through and spending a little bit of time and pre-mixing some colors can really be beneficial. And I don't need to mix every single color because I can always come in and adjust these. You know, just because I've got this reddish doesn't mean I can't add a little yellow and lighten that up. You know, each one of these can become a mother of color on their own, but they're all from this, I guess that case it'd be the grandma color. They're all related still. I'm gonna test and see what happens if I mix some that earthy red into it. All right, it's really quite dark. Don't know, I might be able to use some of that like at the base of this tree. I'm trying to think of where's my darkest darks in my scene. Will probably be kind of in this area, maybe a little bit over here, and maybe I can bring some of that over here. Maybe some into these grasses in here, but I probably won't have too much darks. Otherwise, the shadows are not as special if I have all the shadows being treated the same. Well, let's take some Indian yellow over here and see what happens. So again, this just became the grandma because this is the new mom and warming that up. And I'm just kind of scanning my eyes around here. Just like, okay, this area is going to be lighter. It's getting more light hitting it. It's also a little more wispy. So there's, you know, more light coming from behind it, more light hitting it. This tree's, I think, in shadow from these other trees, you know, maybe a little bit of light on top, but mostly dark in here. These bushes are going to be catching that light as it's raking across this water. So I might be using that. I got to remember to bring a little bit of hints of those color into the reflections. And like I said, this is going to be a big shadow area. And then I'm going to play this area up back here through this arch and back here. I'm going to let it be like there is some fog and atmosphere, and I'll play that up a little bit as I get towards the base of these things. But that light coming through, hitting the atmosphere that's in here is warm light. So it's going to be creating a warmer area back there a little bit. So typically, as things recede in space, you can say that they get cooler, bluer, grayer. But in this instance, where you're looking through all these veils of atmosphere that are being infected or affected by the warm light coming through them, they can appear actually sometimes kind of warmish, which is a lot of fun. So that's a good challenge to see if I can convey depth back here, making these bushes and these bushes further away than these bushes, which are further away from these bushes, which are further away than this, which is further away than this, right? So I'm trying to keep all of that in my head to a degree. But a lot of it's already been slightly done for me because this is already darker than this. This is already darker than this. So I'm giving myself notes. Does that make sense, guys? This is darker. So yeah. These are darker than that. All right, cool. I like to oftentimes paint from my darks to my lights. It just helps me to retain my structure and kind of give me a feel as I'm coming across. Sometimes you will see me kind of like, let's just dab in some warm color here just to kind of test, you know, and see how things are playing. But oftentimes dark to light with oils seems to work the best. I'm just kind of feathering out a couple brush strokes that were left from previous that are kind of bothersome. So it's a really soft fan brush that I got. The CW Mundy fan brush by Rosemary Company. New brush for me. probably one of the most expensive brushes I have, except for its big brother, which was even way more expensive. But I find them to be pretty good for softening brush strokes where I don't want really strong, brutal brush strokes in there. All right. I'm going to get into the shadows in this area. I'm going to kind of play this up so that I can kind of know here and bring a little bit of green into that. But I do want to kind of see what happens if I lighten that up a little bit, adding just a touch of white. Because again, I want to save the darks for here. So that means lightening that up a touch. And let's see what happens. Again, I don't know. Mixing the colors on here is one thing, but as soon as I put them over here, they're next to a whole different color scheme. And they're going to read and feel completely different. Can you see that? How, what, this gray here, how it feels almost bluish when I get it over here. Maybe I need to put it on a little stronger. There you go. You can kind of see that. I want to play up some of the cools in the shadows just to even make the light hopefully feel that much warmer. So can you guys see the variation? How this is just slightly cooler than here?
Yeah.
Yes.
So then I can add just a touch more white. And I can even maybe add a little bit of green. It's being affected by a little more light. The light is kind of wrapping around here. So the shadows in here aren't quite as extreme. And I have to be aware because I'm painting wet into wet, right? I just put down those glazes. I didn't let them dry. That my paint is being affected by that. It is blending into that color a little bit, which can be very, very useful or exceptionally annoying if you're not ready for it or you feel like you're just wrestling with it constantly. Right now, because I'm aware of it, like I already like that jump.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I've just opened up space. Right? Even though down at the base they feel the same, we know now because how much lighter that tree is, that hopefully it appears to be going back into space. Let's use that same color over here in these shadows.
So you are right now working wet into wet, like, you know, like kind of like a oil underpainting kind of, right?
100%. Yep.
Yeah, so you can do it.
Oh, it can be done. No, I mean, that's alla prima, right? It has to be wet into wet. I mean, this wouldn't be alla prima because I already had the underpainting, but alla prima means all at once for,
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know the term. This shadowy area in here, when I look at my reference, feels slightly warmer. And again, it's because there's that atmosphere between us and it, and it's being backlit. So by that warm light. So it's interesting. It can be very confusing for some painters, especially if you came away from my class and I told you that as things are speeding into space, they get bluer and cooler and grayer. But sometimes there's alterations. So you know the rules, question the rules, and try and figure out why is that rule or guideline or recommendation, why is it not working in this instance? Right? So you go, oh, it's because of the weather, it's because of the atmosphere, it's because of the light raking in and through. And that's the stuff I really like to play with. Right? Oh, I mean, this already just makes me so happy. Like I just love that it feels like it's backlit, it's got atmosphere compared to here. This is already dark, but I'll add more dark and more color in there. Let's go ahead and add some darks into these bushes that are much closer, just so we can see the well, actually, I'm going to do through here really quick. So I'm still using this brown as kind of my red, but maybe I'll let a little bit of this quinacridone get in there. This is curious. Let's see what it does. Tiny bit of paint's great to knock that down so it's so warm. And it's just, for those of you who are cooks at all, it's like when you're cooking and you just have to make something out of the ingredients you found in your fridge. You know, you don't have everything you need. So you're just adding a dash of this and a dash of that, and you dip your spoon in just the edge of it, and you kind of give it a little taste. Oh, it needs a little more of this. Oh, it needs a little more of that. That's all I'm doing. So I mixed up a color over here. I'll bring it over here just to see how it plays. It's quite cool. Let's add a touch of red to that. So that's what I mean. Okay, and now I just need a little more chili flake to give some flavor to this or to warm it up. Okay, need a little bit more whatever cream because it's too thin and too. So just, you know, just because you mix the color here doesn't mean you have to put it here. You're going to test it, see how it works. If it doesn't work, don't just keep painting. Get in there and figure out what it needs. And that is one of the trickiest parts. And that's why I don't teach formulas in color theory, is because I could tell you how to mix a color over here, but the color becomes completely different when you put it next to other colors over here. So color theory just doesn't work in real life application. At least for me, I've found it to be more, you know, I've had students who will bring out whole color theory books, and they'll look, okay, I look out there and I see yellow ochre. I flip open to page 32. Yellow ochre is, you know, 25% cad red, 30% yellow, a touch of ultramarine blue, and then they put it on the thing and on the painting, and it just doesn't look like yellow ochre anymore because of all the colors and what they're doing around it. Just kind of cooling down some of these shadows, a little darker, a little cooler, trying to bring these bushes again in front of these trees like they're coming towards us. So my shadows can get a little darker.
You're working from your photo quite a bit, or really not?
50-50 probably.
Okay.
I'm still referencing it. But I'm definitely going to be changing colors. I also have a photo up on my monitor that gives me a little better color because
I was wondering because you seem to be, I didn't see that. So yeah, because I use iPads like a lot of people do.
That's going to give you better color than working off a printout. That's why I do like to work from my monitor. For one, it's backlit monitors, you know, whereas a color piece of paper doesn't have any light source. It's just ink on paper. So a lot of times painting from my monitor is a better thing for me to pursue than just painting from my paper. So a lot of the times the printout for me will be just my design, maybe a rough idea of a value structure. Dark to light, just kind of, again, these shadows kind of give me my form and my structure. Can you see? I mean, I haven't even put the light into these, but the bushes are beginning to evolve. They're beginning to take on a semblance, not a strong sense of form, but a semblance of form just by having a light and a dark cooler and a warmer side. Trying not to rush. That's another thing I do when I'm doing painting demos. Oftentimes I just kind of rush through things and then I end up having to fix a lot. So trying to make sure I'm slow enough that I'm getting the ideas, especially as I'm building up the structure and the form. This is very important because I can come across the color and have a lot of fun here in just a little bit. The light side, that's where the color is generally going to lie. I want some color in my shadows, some variation, not just black and gray, but blues, purples, reds, whatever the color is, greens, hinted at, but the colors are always going to be stronger. And without light, you don't get color. Now I'm going to get to some of our darker darks now. Let's just see how this color plays. We'll go ahead and add a little bit of liquid paste, which is just another medium, but this one that won't run off my panel. I'm just going to dip into it a little bit just with my darks so that it will dry a little bit faster. Got a show coming up. Got to keep them drying. So you can see the shadow right there, that little dab of blue, bluey gray, just a little bit cooler. Probably let it get a little darker. I'm just going to go to my darkest darks real quick and where I want those. So my focal point's kind of in this area. Everything's kind of pointing towards it. So I'm going to go ahead and let some of my darkest darks exist in there so I get a nice strong contrast in that area. The big test will be as it kind of comes up in front of these lighter areas back there. There we go. Good. Reading dark enough. And I'm going to have a little bit of radiant light kind of coming down from the sky, even though the strong light source, but I'm going to have the tops of these bunches of leaves in each area be getting a little bit of light. So it won't be light by any stretch because it's not a strong light that's kind of coming down. But in my photo, it becomes a big wall of, dark. But I don't want that. I want to give this some depth. I don't want just a big flat dark shape. So I'm thinking about that as I'm kind of going, okay, this is the underside of these big boughs of leaves and tree branches. So I am thinking a little bit structurally. I want it to get a little lighter as it gets up here too. So I'm not adding a whole lot of paint, just kind of knocking in some shadow. I can get back to my darks over here a little bit, but I don't want it to be too interesting because again, this area is right on the edge. So I've got to kind of figure out how do I control this. So this painting is odd in that it almost feels like it has competing focal points. So got to a little bit deal with that or just accept it or
I think of it as a continuation of the focal point.
Right, yeah, I mean, it does kind of help to tell a little bit of a story about how the light is moving and what it's doing. And so I apologize, those lights on there are pretty shiny. What I can do is take a really soft brush here, and I'm just going to kind of knock them down a little bit, and that should help alleviate some of that reflective light. There we go. I've got my shadows down here, my grasses, where they're not being hit by light.
What size brush are you using now?
This is a size 6 flat.
Okay.
Yeah, 6s and 8s are my most common go-to brushes, and I prefer flats for anything where I'm kind of feeling like I want some control, because I can turn it on its edge and make really small marks. I can, make it big shapes. You'll see my brush is constantly spinning from big to small. All right, let's add a little bit of this shadow. It's going to be a little lighter, a little warmer into the reflection. Help me describe a little better what's going on down here. I don't have that underpainting stuck down there from the acrylics. I took my reflections away because I wasn't happy with them and never put them back in. So just kind of adding some dark so it's not just all red reflections. But because it's so wet, it is definitely wanting to pick up some of that color from above.
You going to town, honey? Oh.
Mic's open.
It's open.
Oh, sorry.
Good
My
time.
husband decided to work on the hot water heater today. Oh my God.
It'll be useful soon. All right, it is coming along. I'm going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break again. I'll smooth this back so you can kind of get a better view of it. Good test for me in this studio is turning off my light, seeing how it reads. Coming along.
How big is the canvas?
I believe a 20 by 20, I don't know.
Just approximately, that's fine.
Yeah, probably like a 24 by 30. Let's see, I got a 24-inch measuring. So 24 inches wide by 18. 18 tall, 24 wide. All right. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at a little bit right before or about 8 to noon. What I'll do is start bringing in some lights into those trees and grasses and get some color in there. Ooh, I really like how the distance is reading in those furthest back trees.
So do I. It's beautiful.
All right, everybody's coming back.
Yeah,
All right, get started here in one more minute.
no, I'm fine.
Great. It's nice for me to get a couple minutes to kind of look at it and analyze it and decide what I want to do. So I would be bringing the light now, the color, into certain areas. Some of the areas will be strong lights, you know, directly hit by the light source. And others will just be lighter, kind of in the mid out areas, but still in shadow. So they're going to be darker, of course, than the lights, cooler than the lights. And so I'm looking at the right side of some of those bushes. I'm looking at where the grass in the foreground is being strongly hit by the light, but I'm going to be bringing greens or greenish colors into there. And then I'm also seeing a really strong penumbra, or that area where the dark trees are hitting the light sky, and there's a lot of red showing. So I'll be kind of coming in and cutting into that with some of this as well. Move the camera back out of my way here, the tripod. Raise this up a little bit. All right. So let's paint for about 10 more minutes here on these, and then we'll give us some time to go and look at your guys' beautiful work and what you got going on and answer questions. And class seems like it's going to go a little bit long, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, great. I'm just going to use some of this yellow, which is slightly more opaque than the Indian yellow, kind of lighten some of these colors so that I can come across and use that. I could come across simply and go to the lights. Maybe that's what I'll do, and then come across to the mid values a little bit here. So let's go ahead and attack where the light is really hitting objects. I try not to use my white very much to lighten my colors, because I think of white as a temperature shifting, and it will cool areas as well. So if I use very much white, it will definitely cool down my color a lot. It will make it lighter, but you can see how much cooler it is. So I want to be aware of that, and maybe, you know, then I have to come back in and add a little more color to it. I'm just trying to make a nice light yellow, greeny color that I'll be using. So here we go. I'm going to start bringing light as it's coming across and hitting some of these bushes here. So it's catching on the edges of some things like in here. That could be quite a bit warmer. Again, it feels really warm up here, very orangey, but when I get it down here, it's quite cool next to all these warm colors that I have. And this color now doesn't even feel like green at all. Let's just see what happens. It reads as kind of a greenish when I get it on there. This area in here is getting hit by quite a bit of light. I'm really gonna start. A little greener as I go, because it's not being hit by direct sunlight, but there's still quite a bit of light on it. Jonik, are you there? So can everybody see that now, that it feels like the light's hitting those areas a little more? I'm putting it
Yeah.
on kind of handed, but I can always take like another brush without paint and I can kind of come in and manipulate that. But right now I'm just testing to see if that makes it feel like the light is hitting these objects, these bushes. A little cooler, a little darker as they begin to wrap around and get away from that direct light. That's the great thing about having these kind of pre-mixed colors, is I can kind of just be aware of where I am. Really like the reds in this area, so I want to kind of play those up a little bit. Let's do the same thing over here a little bit. Band of grass is kind of going along the bank down there.
That really, really defines what we're looking at.
And hopefully it still feels like it's in space, it's in depth, it's got the same light, it's existing in that same world. I hope. I want to make sure nothing's too garish, nothing's jumping out. So I'm just constantly like putting a little bit on there. And, you know, ideally I would be stepping back. Painting standing up is kind of the only way I feel comfortable painting. I know that's not for everybody, but I just find when I sit down, I don't get up as much as I need to. And I get myself in trouble.
Michael, do you go back and just barely touch where the lights and the brightest lights in the next value meets to kind of zip it up, or do you just leave it that
Yeah, so I would either mix a middle color, or I can simply just kind of, especially since I'm painting wet into wet, I can use those darks that are on there and just,
okay.
so there is some advantages painting wet into wet, as you can use that color that's under there so nicely.
But if it was dry, then you'd make like another value a little bit
Yes.
darker and touch it in.
Great question, thank you.
Thank you. I would like one time to see how you put the mist on.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to do that next week after it's kind of dry.
Okay, that would
And
be
I
wonderful.
put now in wet into wet a little bit. So let's see if we can't get to some of that. Because yeah, wet into wet sometimes is an easier, nicer way to do it. And um, sometimes it's just so much easier after it's actually dry just to kind of scumble in some of that mist. And again,
This
I'm
is-
just constantly thinking that the light's coming from this direction, the light's coming from this direction, so that the light, I want to make sure it's hitting the right side of these trees. And now I'm thinking of the form of these trees, like what are these branches, these leafy structures doing, and how can I help convey that? It's going to be more obvious when I get into here, I hope. But I still want to let the viewer know that I know that this isn't just a dark mass, that there is form in there, even if it's not so big and so obvious. You can get a little cooler as we get into the shadows. The green gets a little cooler. Not sure if you can see that.
Yeah, it's hitting the light is hitting your brush strokes, so we can see it.
Okay. This strong line here is a little bit annoying, so let's just tack that up. And this is just a brush that I chopped up and is all crazy looking. That just helps to scatter and give a kind of a organic thing to it. I want to make sure I'm turning that and moving it so I don't have the same mark. Because even if you have a really broken up, silly brush, if you're using the same marks over and over, kind of defeats the purpose.
On the trees where you put the cooler greens in the shadows, but then you also have the dark red still there. Are you going to go back and put like lighter areas over the shadow, cooler greens, warmer greens? Or I'm just kind of I'm always trying to figure out how to do that.
Well, again, I'm constantly thinking about where is that light source. So I wouldn't put like warms in here too much.
Right.
But there is light coming through from behind, and I kind of like that effect. But yeah, I could definitely calm that down. Let's come into this area a little more. So hopefully some of this is a little more obvious.
Mhm.
So first I'm gonna come in with some of those lights. I want to make a little bit of nice brighter grass right along the edge of where it's meeting the water back there in this little area. So I'm just kind of making a lighter green. Just going to bring a band of it through here. A little hint of it back here. I may have to come back and deal with this because it's pretty beautiful and pretty interesting right there. And it might not be what I want that close to the edge. But, we know the rules. We can decide when we break the rules.
I like the way that you kind of have that side. Um, You know, it's still a little open there. You could walk in there and on the land if you wanted, but your eye still is directed left towards the middle of the painting. So I don't think it looks too beautiful.
Good. Yeah, that's always the concern is, I want everything, again, the diva. Where's the diva? Who's the diva? Problem when as soon as I pick up a little brush is all of a sudden I just find myself painting with a little brush. So I'll try to be aware of that and just go, okay, I don't need the little brush anymore. Let's get back to a bigger brush, make bigger marks. Find it's easier for me to sometimes kind of sneak up on the lights a little bit as opposed to going shooting past them and getting too light too fast.
What did you say, Michael? Sneak up on the what a little bit?
On the highlights. So by
Okay.
not jumping too far ahead, I can kind of just slowly build towards those lights. So again, that whole idea of kind of painting dark to light a little bit, to kind of keep that going, because it's easier to get lighter than it is to get darker after you've already put on lights. A lot of times I find, for me, I do know artists who will argue with me on that and be able to prove it within their own paintings. And again, it's just kind of, as you paint more and more, it's just kind of learn, know thyself and bringing in these greens. They sure feel nice and green and fresh compared to all these oranges I have, but I'm hoping that there's still a nice sense of harmony.
Very pretty.
Thank you. Very fun. I love watching the painting just kind of slowly materialize, and it's now doesn't it feel so much more colorful just having green on there all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's not fighting itself too much. And I can bring some grays or blues into the sky. There's lots of things I can do. And that'll be nice to, get a lot of it covered, but then still have time to look at it, reflect upon it, and just decide what does it need.
I think the highlights that you work in the area where you're working leads the eye right into the where you want everybody to go.
Oh, good. Good.
And I love the dark tree up front with that lighter visual that you created in the trees in the back. It gave it such depth and atmosphere.
Right through here.
Yeah, no, and on the left side too, both sides.
Good.
It shows like it's really like back there.
All right, I'm gonna bring some.
If you finish this before our next class, I don't know if you'd be able to do a little mini or speed it up recording.
Yeah, I can definitely try. Yeah, because next class, I just don't know how much time I would have for continuing on a demo. Just because hopefully you guys will have lots of work turned in and lots to talk about, and kind of nice to have that opportunity. So I'm going to come in and add some darker greens into this area. Look at that. Whew. Kind of looking at where's the tops of these leafy structures. And don't worry, it's not going to be so cartoony as this here in just a second. I'm just kind of putting down areas. Let it get a little warmer. It gets up a little higher, a little more light getting into it. And I'll come through and brush those in a downwards angle so they're not just straight glare for you guys here in just a second. Still just kind of placing.
That makes the tree look really airy and beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of cartoony now because I just put down big clumps, and now I can definitely come through and break those up, get them to merge in with the shadows a little bit. So there's a transition. Just kind of dappling a little bit. So I have kind of a broken brush stroke. Make sure I leave some of those shadows, because again, that's giving me my sense of depth and in the paintings. I need those darks to come forward, right? Compared to the lights behind it, the cooler things that are further back in perspective.
Yes.
Find that soft brush here, and I'll just drag down, so hopefully that'll take away some of that glare.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Amazing.
so nice.
Good, thank you. Need you guys in my studio every day to be ready to
Just
go.
standing and clapping and cheering you on.
When I grow up, I want to paint just like Michael.
There you go.
Oh, Michael, that's beautiful.
Wow.
It took this big dark mass, very flat, almost like a hole, and by adding, even a little more light on the tops, and then a mid, and then down into the shadows. Hopefully, and I'll have to come back in and get some detail. I've got this big band of light here, but let's do the same over here. But I'm going to keep this one a little warmer, so I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's gray, a little bit of blue, so that it's just a little bit cooler, not fighting with this. So that again, I don't want to draw too much attention out here. So fun. Hope you guys are excited and can't wait for this dang class to be over and for me to stop talking so you can get out and start painting and have as much fun as I'm having. Just playing, experimenting, having that conversation both with you guys and with the painting, just as I kind of let the painting dictate what it wants, while also telling the painting what I want it to do. But having that conversation with the paint is one of the highlights for me.
Remember your reflection while you've got the colors there.
You. Brush here. It's up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Bring a little more green in. I got two brushes in my hand, one that I'm applying, one that I'm kind of blending it out a little bit. And then let's go sideways. Doesn't work unless you make sound effects, I guess. These unfortunately are so wet that I don't know if I'll be able to really. Very light touch, see if I can add any of that greenish hint to it at least, but I don't think it's really lying down. Almost ready to jump back to the computer here. Just gonna knock in one more light source or light here.
How do you think you're going to handle the sky on the light side? What color, are you going to put color there or just?
I don't know. I don't know. I love the kind of purpley cools in here, so I'd love to bring some of that across
Oh,
just to
yeah.
kind of tie this in. Yeah, I'm not positive.
I like the idea of the purpley cool.
Yeah, just to counteract all that yellow.
And they go together so well.
They really do, yeah. Complementary colors.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do your, I forget your series name for the golden colors, what do you think of when you're doing the sky?
I mean, those are mostly about light and dark, so a lot of times just big light area. I haven't done too many clouds in a lot of those yet. But yeah, I kind of again think of where's the light source, so get a little darker, a little cooler as we get away from it. But I haven't, yeah, the illuminated tones. I haven't had a whole lot of sky in a lot of them yet. So that's a good question.
So would this one fit into that series?
Almost, huh? I bet you I could sneak it in. Nobody'd be too upset.
I think you did it.
All right, that is a nice start for sure. I mean, and it's a lot of it is pretty far along. Yeah, I'm quite happy. I probably will let it kind of, I mean, I might do a little more today, but I'll probably, because there is some medium mixed in with it, it'll probably be pretty dry as soon as tomorrow or the next day. And I'll be able to come in, and especially thinking about the sky. Yeah, a couple areas where it's got a lot of warmth still. But anyways, there it is.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Very nice.
I got the window open. That's what the glare's from here. Yeah, you can't see it. But yeah, that's again how I'll test it is oftentimes putting it into lower light, seeing if the values are still reading. Kind of goes back to what I was talking about being in competitions and stuff. Is you want it to read, you know, small. You want it to read big. You want it to read under half light, under all sorts of different conditions. So. Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for that. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And I did shoot a fast forward video of that as well. So I'll post that, see if it took. And let's switch cameras, come back to you guys, and let's take a look at some of your work real quickly here and see where we're at getting ready for next week. All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and start it again, just so this part's separate.